All right, we're back.
We're back.
Welcome to the first public meeting of the Pema Chodron fan club.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't even know it was that. That's so good. I forgot.
Yeah,
Have you started reading the book?
I
I'm
have. I'm about halfway through, but it's sort of like when I can think of it, I read it.
totally.
I like it. So
It's dense though, but
it
yeah,
is. It's very dense and tiny little print. Like there's a lot of words in that book.
lots
I
so many
had a lot
words.
to say. So many words in the book.
For anyone
Anyway,
who's watching who didn't watch that episode, by the way, what we're talking about is the book Living Beautifully with Uncertainty and Change, which is one of my favorites. And Pema Chodron is the best. And she's like this badass New Yorker 80-year-old Buddhist nun with a shaved head who lives in Nova Scotia.
yeah,
And she's just about as zen as they come, not zen in the school of Buddhism, but in the sort of
no, she's cool.
colloquial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool as
Yeah.
hell. So I'm
Very.
sure that will come up today. To today's topic. Oh, by the way, for those of you who are unaware, I don't know how you've been aware. Next to me is Lauren Rosen, my licensed marriage and family therapist from the great state of California, and my now monthly collaborator. We do these once a month. We pick a topic and we yammer about it for about 20, 30 minutes. So welcome.
And this? Oh no. You mirrored us. I thought I was going to get it right, man. This is Drew Linsalata. He's the.anxious.truth on Instagram, and he's awesome, and he's got books and podcasts, and check him out if you're here from my page. Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about this is a topic we stumbled upon about an hour ago, and this is something that I found interesting when I was reading through some of the Marty Seif and Sally Winston's books. I think it was the Intrusive Thoughts book, and they talked about this. Like I stressed out when we get stressed out, intrusive thoughts tend to get stickier and louder and harder to handle. And I thought, ooh, this is a thing that I had never considered. And I think certainly, I'm sure you see it in your practice specializing in OCD, but I think in all the anxiety disorders, this becomes a thing. Every single day I see it. Such and such happened, something terrible happened. I lost a pet or my marriage is breaking up or whatever it is. And now I'm back to square one in my recovery. It happens. So this is clearly a thing. Stress will do that to us.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't know about you. I was thinking about it. I have a lot of personal lived experience of this as well, that I can look back in the times in my life when my anxiety has flared back up and I've resisted it, have been at times of increased stress. And even down to the first flare up of my life that retrospectively can say, oh, that was likely to be OCD or anxiety. Um, I don't know. Do you have similar experience?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned along the way to recovery, which for me was panic disorder with agoraphobia, I discovered that every stress in my life instantly morphed into panic and fear. So no matter what I was feeling, if it's something that made me angry, within 30 seconds, I was afraid. If it was something that made me really upset, or something sad, within 30 seconds, I was just afraid. So for me, I saw that that link between sort of stressful situations or stress triggers and fear that way. It just, everything would immediately morph into, oh, now I'm afraid. Here comes a panic attack.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah. And as I went through the process, that happened less and less, but it would still happen. That started to fall away, but the propensity was still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see it now in the community where people will say, oh, I've been doing so great. I've been doing great for 3 or 4 months and really on a good trajectory. And then such and such happened. And for the last week, I got sick or I got COVID or whatever happened. And now I'm right back to square one.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, as we've talked about before, it's not like you're actually back to square one because you never lose the knowledge that you have. And yet what tends to happen and what I see from others and what I've experienced myself is that I forget. I revert back to this, let's resist anxiety. I don't want to feel this. I don't want to have this emotion and I don't want to have these thoughts. So let me try and fix it again, which gets me stuck or it gets the people that I work with stuck. But the idea of I've completely fallen back, it happens a lot. Like when there are big life changes, we see it a lot. I think of relationship OCD or postpartum OCD and where these flare-ups tend to happen around these huge life events, like usually a significant relationship has initiated or you're having a child or right, like these are things that I think of that list I wish I had it, where it's all of the stressful life events and it's
Top
got some
5
sort of,
things that can happen.
yeah, but it's more than that. It's like this whole long list and it's got a numerical value assigned to each stressful event and says, like, if you have above this score, right, like this is indicative of a large stressor. And it doesn't matter if it's the eustress or good stress
Yeah.
or distress or bad stress.
It really doesn't matter in the end.
No, it
I've
doesn't.
seen people struggle. I don't have this experience myself, but I've seen a lot of people struggle even when the stress is positively triggered in a way. Like, oh,
Definitely.
we bought a new house. We're moving to our dream house, and yet I'm a basket case now.
Yes.
Because
Yeah,
moving is stressful for everybody, no matter where you're moving. So
totally. Well, and then you fix the tendency to fixate on what's like getting everything right. If you have something that's this lauded dream of yours that's coming to fruition, any small thing, it's I don't want to have this contaminated by the experience of panic or the experience of generalized anxiety or the experience of intrusive thoughts. So it's almost like, and it happens on birthdays and holidays too. The additional stress of this now has to be perfect actually makes it more likely to be sticky because you're in that initially resistant zone.
yeah, that's okay. That's interesting. I had not considered that before. It has to be perfect. That's why
Yeah.
good air quote good stressor can be a problem. Also, then I guess.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's one way to look at it and certainly something that I see come up with my clients.
I think one of the things, and again, when reading about it in the Seif and Winston book, the way they made it sound, which makes sense to me, fatigue. When you're fatigued, you're sleep deprived, you're physically ill, you're under a large load of stress, life stress. And you said, well, it's like I revert, I revert to the
Mhm.
old habits of resisting. And I think a lot of people will misinterpret it as it came back, but I would agree with you. No, no, no. The way we're relating to it, we've just gone back to old habits, and we tend to fall back to old habits because we lose that resiliency that we built somehow.
Yeah.
Or other, it melts away for temporarily.
And it's so normal. Okay, so it's like if you're learning a new sport, right? So I'll give an example. Hilariously, I have decided to play a little golf, not because I'm any good at it or particularly athletic, but because my stepsons and my husband are playing. So I'm like, all right, I'll give this a go. And you learn all of the specifics, like how to grip the club and how to swing and blah blah blah, how to stand. Now, as soon as it takes so much concentration when you're building this new habit, this new ability to bring together all of these ideas. And then all of a sudden, some stress comes about. In fact, usually it's in the form of somebody staring at me or like watching me. And all of a sudden, it's like it all goes out the window. And I think the same thing is true with the skills that we talk about using for anxiety and OCD are so counter to our sort of natural MO as human beings that when there's stress, of course we default back to like, no, I don't want to have this experience or have that tendency to default back anyway.
Yeah, and I think our ability, because it does, what we're doing is work. It takes work to run counter to our instincts. And we just, I don't know, it's fatigue, it's cognitive load. I don't know what it is, but we just seem to lose that ability. And so people will want to say it's back, or I'm having a relapse, or it came back, or I'm back to square one. But really and truly, that's not true. It's just, oh, we reverted to some old habits
Yeah.
because we lost the ability to be flexible and flex those new muscles and use those new skills. We forgot them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We started to struggle again against it instead of accepting, moving with it, navigating life with it in tow, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
And it's interesting because you're right. And you could see that in almost every facet of life. Sports is a good example. It's interesting. I was watching a hockey game the other night,
Naturally.
naturally back to our origins, fire and ice. And, one team was playing really, really well and everything's going great. They're dominating the game. But as soon as the other team sort of shows up
Mm,
and they pick up their game, now that first dominating team is under pressure. They're under duress and it starts to fall apart. How could
yeah.
that be? The very same guys who were playing positionally perfect hockey 5 minutes ago are now playing like college hockey and they're getting killed. How could this be?
Yeah.
So I think this is not probably unique to the anxiety complex. It's probably just a human function in general.
Absolutely, and trying to practice something that is not necessarily intuitive,
Yeah. Like,
under stress is hard. Yeah, like golf. Like golf.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think large stressors too, and this is why when we were talking about it earlier and discussing what we were gonna talk about, why I said I would immediately go to groundlessness and get all deep about Pema Chodron,
Why in
hence
it?
the Pema Chodron fan club, is because what happens when especially when there are large stressors, but honestly, it can be with any sort of stressor, we get in touch with the fact that everything is constantly moving. And when we're going about our lives and things are relatively unchanging, right,
Mhm.
from day to day, and we're in a habit, it there's a comfort to that. And there is this illusion that everything is always the same and safe and fine and everything's going to continue on the way it is.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden something changes and it's like, what? Like it cues you into the fact that we're not standing on solid ground. Everything is constantly shifting and changing. And that just is a florid place for our anxiety and OCD to blossom.
That's a really good point. It's like a slap in the face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I guess if you're being dragged around by anxiety and panic or OCD or compulsions and intrusive thoughts all the time, you're just trying to find some stability there.
Yes.
And you manage to build it, and then something yanks it away, and you discover nothing is stable. Nothing,
Right.
nothing. And it's a hard realization to come to.
It is, and it's the ultimate truth of life, right? There's never any stability, and the quicker you can get to sort of dancing on the moving blocks that you're walking over instead of trying to make them stable,
Mhm.
because it's not a possibility. It's like saying like, "Well, there shouldn't be any earthquakes." It's like, "Okay, try to stop an earthquake. Good
Yeah.
luck."
Yeah.
So if you recognize, okay, the earth is going to quake sometimes, how do I learn how to walk over the earth as it's moving, as opposed to, not that I'm suggesting people should not take shelter. There's an actual earthquake, but the metaphor.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, how do we learn how to navigate shaky ground instead of trying to make the ground less shaky?
So much of this, I think, if we go beyond anxiety and recovery, this is why we practice things.
Mm,
This is why we rehearse things. This is why teams practice so that when another team is pressing on them, they can
mhm.
still perform even while under duress. And I
Yeah,
think whether it's you're practicing your ERP and you're resisting of your compulsions or exposures, whatever it is, or just life in general, just practicing being resilient and
yeah,
walking on the moving blocks all the time,
yeah.
then we tend to not get taken by surprise, I guess, when it's right in our face.
Totally, and I would add to that meditation practice,
Mhm.
right? Mindfulness practice. It's the same idea. How do I relate to things, and how do I practice relating to things so that when things become challenging, that becomes more of the default, or it's easier to pivot toward that. Um,
Yeah.
and just because I know that I can get pretty esoteric, like to ground this in like the specifics, I feel like could be helpful and talk. So what does it mean to move with the moving blocks or walk with the moving blocks versus trying to hold the ground still? If we look at panic disorder, that looks like accepting the possibility that at any step along the journey, you might stumble
Mhm.
and experience panic, right? That might happen. That's what it is to accept that the blocks are moving, is to accept that the feared outcome might happen, that it not necessarily, right? You've been walking for a while, or you maybe at some point in your life were walking for a long time without having panic.
Mhm.
Um, but that if it does, you'll navigate it as it comes, as opposed to, again, getting down on your hands and knees and trying to hold the ground together, which is a fool's errand.
You can't
And
do it.
causes you more anxiety because you're like, "Why can't I do this?
Right.
I should be able to do this." Um,
Yeah, I think if you tie that into, sort of the premise that we're talking about today too, when the blocks move, all the blocks move. So,
mm,
okay, the blocks of my panic disorder are moving because I had a panic attack again after 6 months of not having one.
yeah.
But all the blocks in my life move. So a stressful thing happened. I got sick or someone I love got sick, or I lost someone in the family, or I got a promotion at work, or lost my job. All the blocks move. Why would you think that only the job blocks are moving?
Right.
All the blocks are moving, including the anxiety and mental health blocks and relationship blocks. Everything moves.
Yeah, actually, to that end, if we talk about it in the context of like postpartum OCD and the like all the blocks moving, it would be like expecting that you were going to have a child and that all of your life wasn't going to change around that.
Yes, that's really good.
Would be ludicrous,
How would
right?
it be possible? Right, exactly.
Yeah, because here's this thing that's completely shifting and learning how to navigate this new setup of the blocks and the moving, and then as soon as you get used to it, something else shifts, something else changes, which is why it's not about getting the blocks to stop move, it's about learning how to dance on the blocks moving.
And it's so funny. I find this is a fascinating discussion. I'm digging this because so many people, if you ran some memes and cliches across them about this sort of thing, like everything is connected to each other and life is one big holistic experience, it would be like, yeah, definitely. But then when confronted with that, well, I lost my job and the rest of my life rippled also. Oh, why
That
did that
wasn't supposed to happen.
yeah, but you just liked all those memes about life being one big connected holistic experience, but now you want to deny it when you actually have to live that. And
Yeah.
I'm not picking on anybody, but it's just one of those things. And then you have that mistaken conclusion that like, well, all the blocks moved from under me, so therefore I have failed in my recovery and it's back and I'm having a relapse. No, just the ripples happen,
Yeah.
including that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shoot, something of what you just said too lit up something in my mind, and then it
Are you going to tell
extinguished.
your golf clubs?
Uh, no, no, it's gone. It happens at least once one of these things now.
Come
It's
back.
good.
They'll come back, I'm sure. So, all right. So then something happens. There's a shift in some part of your life. There's a stressful situation. Some terrible event happens, or some great event happens, and the ripples go through your whole life. And now you have an impact on your recovery, or whatever you want to say it is. What do you tell somebody? What would you tell somebody?
So I think a lot of it is in the way that we view these moments, because I think that it can be viewed as an opportunity for practice.
Mm,
I
yeah.
actually honestly, some of the conversations that I have are a lot like the one we're having now, are saying, "Yeah, look, you've touched into groundlessness. Here it is. It was here all along. You were sort of blind to it. It wasn't particularly apparent that everything was able to shift, but then things shifted and you're like, whoa, everything could shift again and again. What if it does?" And the reality is, yeah, it might, but we know that large shifts don't happen all that often. And so I guess we got to take a leap forward as though this is the new ground you're working with until it shifts again.
Yeah. Okay, I dig that. I also dig. Then there's also that unrealistic expectation that some people might have. That
Mm.
I guess, and I understand this. I'm not picking on anybody. If you're suffering, for a while, you are trying to eliminate that. Clearly, it's our nature. We want to do that.
Yeah.
And I think there's the reality that says, well, I'm just trying to create a stable, calm, like you said in the beginning, a
Mm.
stable, calm, quiet life, no suffering, nothing. I don't want any of that. I'm trying to get rid of all of that. And then I think these are the times when you get slapped in the face. No, sorry, nobody gets out of this thing that way. You're still
Mm.
human, and you will have emotions, and you will have reactions, and you have to learn to integrate them again in a healthy way. So this
Yeah.
isn't a failure. It's just now we're gonna put another piece of the puzzle in here, I think, a little bit.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just you have another chance to reorient with everything that is. And you're right. Nobody gets out of this unscathed.
No.
That groundlessness is for everyone. So
And I think the judgment too of the situation itself I cannot allow this situation. We're always trying to, listen, you have no choice. Judging the situation as this shouldn't happen, or why do I feel this way? Well, you just lost someone close to you, or something major happened in your life. Why
mhm,
wouldn't you feel this way? Of course you're going to
right?
feel this way. Trying to not feel it at all is not like trying to hold the ground together, I guess.
Yeah,
So that's so unreal, very unfair. People put that unfair expectation on themselves.
it is. And I think part of it is the larger expectation that we should always have our stuff together, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That we should
that's
control this.
what's that?
Yeah, we should be able to control all of this somehow.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
So
funny.
that when things are shifting, when we feel off kilter, that there's something wrong with that instead of, no, no, that's what it is to be a person, right? Like it's not going away. It's okay.
That's a really good point. And that's a groundlessness thing. That's woven into so many different things. That's acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. Acceptance. The acceptance part is that is a shared human experience. We
Yeah.
suffer, we have problems, we feel things. Deal with it. This is what it is. And we don't get away, we don't get to not have that.
Yeah.
So, I think that that's a big part of this puzzle too for a lot of people. Then they forget. Well, they get so caught up in feeling. And I
Mm.
understand it becomes maladaptive that I don't want to feel anymore. And they're
Right.
hoping that the recovery process is teaching them to be almost robotic or not human anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
totally. Well,
that's not
and
what this does.
one of the things that the thing I think I sort of lit up on before was this idea that even as we're talking about things, we're making it sound like I say the word dance. And I like that because when I'm in it, I'm like, okay, I'm like gonna dance with this. Like that feels good to me. But the reality is that we're talking about this in a broad way that doesn't sort of get at the fact that in the moment, what we're talking about is really being willing to open to something that is terrifying. It's not cute, it's not pretty, it's not necessarily graceful.
Yep.
And so knowing that like the talking about this experience versus being in the thick of it, it's not always going to look shiny and cute.
No, and I think people tend to also they don't give themselves a fair shake because they're going to look to, oh, what would Lauren tell me to do? My tools. I get asked all the time, how do I use my tools? Well, sometimes you don't. Like the tools are navigation tools. They're not tools of change. They're
Yes.
tools of navigation. So
Yes.
people
They're not
maybe
tools of eradicating, right? Like
correct. Yeah, you're right. Like
yeah.
nobody, I'm not teaching you to have like a flamethrower of emotion that you just and that's it. And
Yeah.
it's all gone. Like your therapist isn't teaching you that at all. So I think sometimes people have an unrealistic or a skewed expectation that my tools, yeah, but the tools, you're still going to feel the feels. You have
That's
to feel.
actually I love that so much, and it, sort of hit me, a metaphor that in terms of looking at tools is as though you are navigating a stormy sea as a captain of a ship, right? You don't expect for your tools to make the sea placid,
Oh, that's really good. That's really good.
right? Well, it was from you. I
Yeah.
bounced.
Yeah. What you have in
Um,
your hand there is a rudder, not,
yes.
not a weather machine.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you might have some information about the way that the waves are going and all of that, and you might be able to, batten down the hatches, so to speak. I don't even know what that means, but that's a phrase, so
But I hear
whatever. Yeah, exactly, batten them down. So, like, and what I imagine that would mean is like just being like, okay, I'm gonna move through this. I'm gonna wait this out, knowing that storms always come and go.
Mhm.
But we're not waiting for it to go. We're just learning how to navigate the ship while we're caught in the storm
Yeah.
and in good weather. It's both.
Yeah, and I think this storm analogy can be, oh man, we could use it for the rest of the time for sure. I think
Yeah.
people they will call themselves failures because the storm happened. Also,
Right.
like, but
Yes.
you don't get to pick that, and then maybe
No.
right, you don't get to pick the fact that a storm happened in your life. You didn't make that.
No.
And I think sometimes they feel like, yeah, but it was there, but I saw it as if somehow they knew it or they could see it all
Mm.
the way there and they could run the other way. I ran
Or
right
that they
into it.
should.
Right. So then you don't get to pick that. You don't, that's not a failure. Having this happen and having maybe your OCD flare up or your thoughts come back or your panic symptoms go, it's not failure. That you didn't fail at all. You're just living your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I love that, and I think the idea that, like, well, I saw it coming potentially, like, I saw something I should have known, and therefore I should have turned around. It's like, well, no, you don't want the storm to change your course. Not this particular one,
Right. Are you
right?
going to, part of what you learn to do is to go through these.
Right.
Storm
Because
will pass
otherwise
beyond your course. Right.
right, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're just bouncing to and from, and you're never getting to settle in a place that you are not settle in a place. I mean, like, you don't get to keep your course. You don't get to go to the places that you wanna go, right? Like, you don't get to live in accordance with your values and your goals. Instead, you're bandied about by anxiety.
Yeah, that's true. But I think in the end, if you're doing this, and I don't even want to use this word, but if you're doing it right, air quotes right, if you're respecting the process and letting the process take you where you want to be, and you're down the road to recovery, then you do get to live according to your values,
Yes.
what's important to you. And that storm blows through, and you take on a little water, and you have a bad hair day as a result, and and all that stuff. But your values are still intact. And when the storm blows past, you're still going. You're still moving in your direction. You're
Yeah.
going where you want to go.
That's
Just with
it.
that a little bit of an interruption. So
The
it's not
tools are to get you toward your goals and values, not to avoid storms.
correct. Yeah, they're not teleporting you to your goals and values. You have to get there, and there are going to be storms and potholes and detours along the way, and you learn to navigate through those. That
Yeah.
idea that tools are not tools of eradication, they're tools of navigation. But there's a bumper sticker in there somehow.
Wow, I think you just said it. They're not tools of eradication, they're tools of navigation. There's an Instagram post for
Yeah, we'll do that together. We will do that. It's tomorrow's post for both of us. How's that?
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, recovery tools are not eradication tools, they're navigation tools. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because I think and I love what you said about the storm because so many people think it's their fault that they're back at square one because a storm arrived, which is just
Yeah,
what? No, you
yeah, it's
didn't do
not
anything
fair.
wrong. You're
Right.
living a life and storms hit all the time.
And I think, there's that realization also that if for somebody who's dealing with OCD or health anxiety or panic disorder, whatever it is, when a ripple happens in your life because of some event that you cannot control nor predict, your ripple, you'll feel the ripple in your OCD or your panic disorder or your health anxiety. For someone else, they might feel the ripple in their gambling addiction or their alcohol
Mhm.
addiction or
Yeah.
their whatever other bad choices they may make in life or other ways that they might begin to overeat. Everybody experiences the ripple somehow. This is where our ripples are. It doesn't make
Well,
it your
yeah.
fault or failure.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know it totally makes sense. I think that it's makes total sense because the all of these mechanisms are ways for us to hold on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're all ways for us to like we revert to let's say OCD since we used panic disorder earlier, right? Like I'm going to revert to trying to figure out this one small element of my life because if I figure that out, then everything else is going to be okay.
Mm.
As opposed to recognizing like no, I'm just feeling uncertain right now and there's no amount of of trying to figure that out that's going to get me the sort of ease throughout. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Even though that maybe the ripple in this part of life will trigger the need to figure out a completely different part of life because
Yes.
right,
Exactly.
so that'll calm everything down. I'll fix that. I can't fix this. So I'll fix this, and that'll make everything better.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
That's the promise I think of anxiety disorders and OCD is that if I can make sure I'm never going to have a panic attack, I'll be fine.
everything else
That's
is
the
going to be
problem. Yeah.
cake gravy, man. Yeah, I get it. I
Yeah.
actually hear people say that on a regular. If I could just figure this one thing out,
Yeah.
whether it's an OCD subtype expressing or a panic symptom, or whatever it is, if I could just figure this one, this is the one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
It's
then
a
there's all the other
beautiful
stuff.
lie, isn't it?
I think it's probably a universal lie. We see it come out in that area, but I'm sure that we all tell ourselves that universal lie in a lot of different ways. Everybody
Yeah.
probably in some ways. So
Which is maybe where there's so much benefit in recovery because I think the people who have to go through this for one reason or another because of anxiety, generalized anxiety or panic disorder or phobias or OCD or whatnot, that they start to see it happening across their lives and they don't let even as much the cursory emotional states get them off course.
yeah, 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 yeah. You're correct. You're right. Cursory emotional states is a great
That's
phrase.
that's our band name. That's the disco band.
Cursory
Sorry.
emotional states. That's
I
our band. That is so good.
fire and ice
Oh,
because I didn't want to let that go. But
cursory
yeah,
emotional states is yeah. Okay, that's a band name. I'll take it. Or
yeah,
at a minimum, that's a debut album. At a
sure,
minimum. Yeah,
yes.
yeah, for sure. Anyway. All right, we're at about the 30-minute mark, so we'll wrap it up. What do how do you want it? So somebody is in the thick of this right now.
Yeah.
They had, oh my God, something terrible happened, or I'm under the gun, and I'm right back to square one.
Mm.
What would you tell them?
You're always only a step away from pivoting back to acceptance, back to the tools, back to navigating things as they are, as opposed to trying to resolve something that can't be resolved. So it's okay. You know how to do this. You've done this before. we're gonna practice. Here we are. There's feelings and thoughts and uncertainty, and this is an opportunity. Here we go.
I love it. One step away from pivoting back to where you know what you have to do.
Yeah.
Well, we'll wrap it up there. I can't do any better than that.
You can't. Are you sure?
I
bet you can.
Wow. Throw down the gauntlet here. Anyway, that was good. I always love these. We'll be back again. Maybe next time we will do a Q&A.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll put up questions on Instagram, let people, and then we'll answer questions. And
I love it.
Yeah. So anyway, for those of you who are not, I put it up on the screen. For those of you who are not following Lauren, she's right there at The Obsessive Mind on Instagram.
And if you're not following Drew, he's there. He's at the.anxious.truth. And he's awesome. So go follow him.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So we'll put this up on my YouTube like we always do, and wherever else you're going to find it. It's great. Put your comments. We'll do our best to answer them as best we can. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks, Lauren.
On the flip side. Bye.
All right. That's awkwardly